Wisdom in the bottle. Everyone has herpes nowadays. All right, so we're recording now. Inaugural toast for whatever this is going to be. There we go. So yeah, well, thanks for the shot. Gonna make the most of it I can. I'm not gonna baby this, so here's to a long life of health, wealth, love, and happiness. To our past, present, and future relationship together, and everyone else's together with their partners, your family, your friends, your loved ones, and yourselves. Oh, yeah. So, what is this? That's a really good question, because even I don't know. And I'm the one that started doing this, so I guess it'd be wise to tell you something, right? Well, I promised myself a long time ago I'd try and start up a YouTube series again, or at least a podcast, and that's what this is going to be. This is going to be random as random can be, and that's kind of by design. You know, I tried doing a Let's Play, and did pretty okay, but keeping up with videos like that constantly, buying new games when they came out, it's just, well, I can't do it. You know, I don't got work at the moment. I haven't for a long while, to be honest, so I can't afford to be doing that. And if you follow us on Cage's Kiss, then you'll possibly know one of the reasons I'm drinking today. Besides, it's my birthday, and I just felt like, why the hell not? If you follow us on Twitter and our episodes, myself and Linda, my co-host, we recently lost our father. Very suddenly, in fact, lost our father. And I hate that I can say that, but it's the truth. It was very sudden. And we've all kind of been dealing with it in our own way, and part of my dealing with it comes from my sister, actually. He had told my sister to continue with her studies, how important it was that she finish her classes, that she do her best. So that's what she's been doing. And for me, what I took from him, one of the many things I took from him, was he always believed that if you have a project, if you have something you want to do, don't hesitate. Just do it. And more so, if you have a skill, if you have something you're good at, don't keep it hidden. Just go with it, run with it, and be the best you can at it, or at least do it so you can say you did it. It's better to know that you tried versus not done anything at all. So I guess that's where this comes from and where we're at right now. But yeah, this first episode, even if it is an episode that I will air, which I probably will. I mean, fuck it, why not? This is probably going to be a downer episode. I'm just going to say it right now. But everything else on here, hopefully not going to be a downer. I actually plan to talk a lot about movies and video games. Basically a lot of things that just either piss me off, things I enjoy, or things in the news I really have trouble with. And the setting for all this, so you all know, we're still currently at this time in quarantine. And self-quarantine, I should note. So my thought was, since there's a lot of people out there who've decided to take up the long-held tradition and unemployment of drinking whenever the fuck you want, people tend to miss bars. And I gotta say, when I was a cook for X amount of years, which is a long fucking time, I actually missed being in bars too. I didn't drink that much. I really didn't. But I enjoyed the conversations the bars brought. And bars, for the most part, were places you could go and just pick up on random bullshit conversations. And conversations you didn't even know you wanted to hear until you heard them. It was a good place to hear ranting and ravings and for people to make points as well as start fights. So, I mean, if I'm going to do something like this where I really don't have any leadership in this, I don't have any direction I want to go, I'm just going to do this totally gonzo. And for that to make sense, I feel at least, the setting should be, we're in a bar here. Any and all of you listening to me, this is your bar. And I'm buying drinks, and I'm going to start telling stories and shit I need to get off my mind, get out of my head and my chest, and just start going from there. So, hopefully, it'll be entertaining most of the time. Hopefully, my rants will have something in them that you'll enjoy. And if not, fuck it. This is just something I'm going to do for myself. Can't say how often I'll be posting these, but maybe it'll be fairly regularly. We'll see. Because there's a lot of things I got to say about a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of shit that pisses me off. But I felt, why? Why would I want to do this now and open it with, of all things, talking about our father's passing, But that's kind of the whole point of what it is I'm trying to do. I want to do this because I want to get what's in my head out there. Because this is shit I normally do at my own time that makes me sound a bit fucking crazy. But, I mean, shit, we all do that. Well, not all of us. Most of us do that. Most people end up talking to themselves, not because they're fucking crazy, unless you're on the street and you're jerking off while talking to people about the downfall of human society. But if you're just working out your own shit, working on problems, trying to make sense of something, you might just start ranting out loud to yourself because it helps to hear a voice while you're doing so. So why not do this and start with this, right? And again, you have the right to tune out whenever you want, because I'm still going to continue this, and these episodes will take as long as I deem or until the whiskey takes hold and I can no longer speak. Speaking of. Oh. So, yeah. What I'm drinking tonight, in case anyone wonders, is rye whiskey. I'm not going to say the name because, well, no one's going to sponsor this. And I don't want to get in trouble. But, why do I drink rye whiskey? Well, because regular whiskey brings on migraines. Part of the reason why I don't drink a lot, at least in the past. I'm one of those 10% of men that gets migraines. And I'm in the lesser 6%, I believe it is, that have cluster migraines. And the even fewer percent who actually gets the telltale signs they're about to have a migraine. So I actually know when to avoid this shit. And I learned from going out drinking with my buddies, especially after work and at bowling alleys and with exes, that there's certain things I couldn't drink. And I had no idea why they would bring on migraines and shit. But through brewing, which was an interesting thing I got into, I started to find out that it was certain grains. And with beer, for instance, I can't drink a lot of beers if they're hopped, really badly hopped. Hops just make my brain go, hey, fuck you, and bring on a migraine that makes me want to drill a hole in the side of my head. Which, if you've never had a cluster migraine, that's what they feel like. It legitimately makes you feel that any kind of hole put into your head is going to alleviate every bit of pressure. Even breathing makes you fucking hurt. So yeah, once I started brewing, I started to discover what I could drink. And it made me happy because, I mean, if you don't want to drink and you're out socializing with your friends, that's totally cool. That's great. I just liked drinking when I was with friends because some of them tasted good. Some of the drinks I had, they were nice. Others taste like shit, but that's an episode all its own, which I will get into, believe me, because I have a lot to say about beer, especially IPAs, because fuck IPAs. But anyway, Regular whiskey, kind of iffy on me. Unless it's wild turkey for some reason. That shit's just beautiful. Rye whiskey, shit's money. I fucking love it. So yeah, inaugural episode, possibly, likely. The reason I want to talk about my dad was because everything that makes me who I am, like everyone else out there, it comes from your parents. Whether you love your parents or you despise them, everything that makes you part of that comes from them. It's just, yeah. And I've had to go through many a year where I've answered the phone at my parents' house or even my cell phone, and I've had family members think I was my dad. So it's kind of something you groan at and roll your eyes at, but then later on, you come to find endearing and you really actually enjoy that a bit. And like I said, it's my dad, his beliefs, and what he said about talents that kind of pushed me to doing this, because that's something I've had to hear my whole life with my parents. And it's nothing bad against them whatsoever. I am the master of my own destiny and demise. And I will happily admit that. Because back in, as far back as junior high, actually, I was a pretty damn good artist. I drew a lot of Garfield from hand. I used to trace a lot. Like I traced Simba from Lion King and Garfield until I could do that stuff freehand rather, sorry. Then I started coming up with my own drawings, and it was something I really enjoyed, but I was just so shy about sharing things like that with people. I just felt like that was something for me. So eventually I got out of it. And it's because not sharing it with people, I didn't get support on it. So I just gave it up. And I went from that into writing. And something that I've never even shared with my parents, actually. This is a first for me. I had to go to study hall a lot because I was not interested in a lot of my classes. And the only ones that actually did incredibly well in were music, my guitar, shop class, art, and writing. So when we would go into study hall, you have about an hour or so, an hour and a half that you're supposed to be studying, doing homework. The entire time I was there, and this went on for about, I want to say 2 months, a month, 2 months. I have to look at the books. Anyway, the entire time I was there, I ended up writing a 400-page story. And it was the first time I just had anything like that happen. I would stay at school, pull out my little notebook, start writing down entire chapters. And these things had no breaks because I just said, fuck writing, right? I just wrote what came to my head. And it's funny because looking back at some of those books, they actually start out as legitimate science papers, history papers, and then just turn into page after page after page after page with no breaks. And then I would go from that at school to home, and I wouldn't even look at the books. I would just start going off of memory from what I wrote at school and start typing away into our computer. And before I knew it, I had and printed out a 400+ page story called The Chosen One. And I didn't want to tell anyone. It's like I didn't want to tell my parents about it, because I was afraid they would have been upset that I spent all my time when I was supposed to be studying, improving my grades. And instead, I was writing a story. It's something that could have been made into a fucking novel for all I know. And that wasn't the first time. After that, I wrote 3 more books with it, continuing that story. And right now, all of those are in a manila envelope somewhere upstairs in my parents' attic. And I'm going to eventually get a hold of those. But I also wrote a lot of poetry, and I just, everything and anything, any idea that came to mind. And it's still something that sticks with me today. And it's kind of funny because doing role play games, playing MMOs online, just this ability to just pull out of my ass any idea, any character, and just make a full backstory off of this, make an entire story off of just one idea. I mean, it's something I've just kind of used for fucking around, but it's something I realize now I could have been using as an actual skill. I could have been using to possibly make a living. Shit, I still probably could. I just don't know. And here I am. I've just now turned 40. So yeah, kind of sad, but again, master of my own destiny and demise. Not going to take blame and put it on someone else for that. It's all on my shoulders. Because I never wanted to share stuff like that. I always felt it was personal. And it's actually something funny that my dad and I used to go headbutting each other on when I was in school. Oh, that was not meant to sip like that. Oh, man. Good burn. Where was I? Oh, yeah. In my writing class, we had a Halloween story. Halloween project. We were all told to write a Halloween story and make it spooky, make it gory if you want, just make it something that can be read in front of people. And if everyone finished, then we would read it in front of the class, and then they would choose a winner for that. And the winner would get it published in like the school newspaper or yearbook, some shit like that. Anyway, I was really into this, and I started coming up with a story that, oh man, it's been so long. The story was about a guy who he came across a man that ran to their village claiming that death was after him. And the man in the middle of the night suddenly was found trying to kill a villager. So the man that took him in ended up killing him. And that night, the man who killed him and took him in, he started succumbing to what was happening to the man before, where every time he would fall asleep, he would instantly start just going on these rampages. He would dream that something was happening, that he was being chased by monsters or shit like that. And he would end up killing people. And then when he wakes up the next morning, has no idea what he did, just the after effect. And during the entire time, he knows now that there's a hooded figure chasing after him, trying to kill him. So he's trying to get away from this figure. He's trying to escape what's coming for him. And God, it was supposed to have been a minimum of 10 to 12 pages. I ended up writing about 54 pages. And the kicker is I didn't turn it in. And there's two reasons I didn't. First reason, same as everything else, like I said before. I felt that it was a bit private, and I didn't know about sharing it. The second reason, and why it upset my teacher and her assistant, was that I had missed the due date because I was still writing it. I didn't want to turn in a project I hadn't finished. And I tried explaining that to the teachers. And it was kind of funny now thinking about their reaction. We're like, look, we failed you, but you could have turned this in. And even if you went over a few pages and it wasn't complete, you still could have turned it in. You still could have got an incomplete. Anything is better than failing when you didn't fail. But I just stuck to my argument and I told them, look, I get that, but I didn't want to turn something in that wasn't finished because I had to finish it. I had to finish it. I had to see it through. So I did. And it was late. And my best friend, Erin, she had won the past few years in a row. She was a senior now, and this was her last year. And anyway, she ended up winning again. But just to make their point, the teacher asked me to give her my story, even when it was complete, even though it was late. And she ended up reading it to the class. And everyone agreed. And including her other morning class agreed this was a better story. And this should have won. Even Aaron conceded the same thing. And it was just, I got the point and I got the message. But I'm a stubborn fucking dude. And I still just said, yeah, whatever. I just wanted to keep it to myself. So I did. Yeah. And again, it's, I can always play the what if game, but, fuck it. You're at this point in your life. You start learning. It's just not worth it. I mean, shit, why depress yourself any even further, right? But it's the point that my parents kept trying to get into me, and it's something I'm looking back at now, like, I get it. And I should have listened to a lot of things they said, but at the same time, there's a lot of things I did listen to. There's a lot of advice I did take from them that they just never really got. But that's kind of where, oddly enough, my fun memories come from with, like, my dad. Because I have a lot of good memories with him. And that's kind of, I don't know how to put that, actually. Because we didn't have a strained relationship. I just wasn't necessarily that close to him. Me and my sister were very much the stereotypical, I'm a mama's boy, she's a daddy's girl. She was always closer to him. They did a lot together. And my dad, he did love me, but his thing was, it was very hard for him to always show emotion. And same with our mother, because they came from a time where you had to be tough. It's like you couldn't cry in front of your kids, for one. And any problems you had to be dealt with in private. You didn't air your laundry out in front of other people, which I agree with. But for him, trying to be emotional, trying to open up, you could tell it was difficult for him. And it's one of those that came easier, it seemed, with my sister, but with him and I, we just kind of butted heads a lot because he would try to instill in me things that he got from his father. And his father was very much an alpha type. And the lessons he taught him were a lot of tough love. But my dad was stuck in the spot most parents are, where you want to be a good parent and you want to instill in them the things that you learned, what helped you in life. But you also remember how your parents were when they raised you. And it teaches you from that how you don't want to treat your kid and how you do want to treat your kid. It's just my dad struggled because he always seemed to believe that he was never good enough. He always seemed to believe that his dad just did everything right. And normally with him, whenever he actually would open up and you could get him to do a heart-to-heart, he would always just kind of say, well, I don't know if you got my point or not, but I hope it wasn't a total waste of your time. And looking back now, I mean, that's where I get that. That is where I get that. And I'm not ashamed of that. I mean, it does suck, yeah. But I think we're all like that anyway. But it's just something, the insecurity and being unsure yourself. I get that, but it's hard. It's hard to say that in relation to my dad because I don't want it to come off like he was never supportive. He was, and I know everyone says their dad was the greatest. Their dad was the best at this. My dad was one of the more supportive people in my life that I'd ever known. And that's something him and our mom shared. They both had a childhood that they weren't necessarily proud of, but did have good moments. And they both knew for sure how they didn't want to raise us and how they did. And again, it's something that me and my sister benefited from, but also definitely got spoiled from. I'm not going to say we weren't spoiled. We were spoiled, but not in a shitty way. We were spoiled just right. And I mean, bless my sister's heart. She's in a really good place right now. And she's got a really good support circle. And I kind of wish that I had followed in the same. But getting back to another point earlier I was making, with my dad and I, we didn't have a very close relationship. And it actually took something which is very much a big part of who I am now to get us together. And that was film. Growing up, we used to make fun of my dad because he loved Star Trek: The Next Generation and the original Star Trek. And anytime a Tom Clancy novel came out as a movie, we were going to go. Even if we didn't like political dramas and shit and didn't understand a damn thing of what's going on, we were going to go because my dad loved that stuff. Same thing with Star Trek. My mom hated Star Trek. She hated it with a passion. She still can't stand it. And we used to just laugh at him for it. But I was working as a prep cook. And it was a very shitty job, which again will be another episode I'll get to talk about because that place, holy hell, there are some good stories there. But when I was getting my paycheck, me and my ex, we used to go to Costco a lot. And I used to enjoy it because it was like a playground to me. As soon as you would go to the middle of the store, there was a section that had tables of books. And on the other side of the books, movies. And I loved it because they were usually pretty damn cheap. And I noticed that they were starting to sell the DVD packs. This was when DVD was still kind of just hitting its stride, mind you. Star Trek Next Generation had just come out on DVD. And it started slowly dropping in price. And I saw they had the first season for, I want to say it was $45 at the time, which back then, and I have to say that now because I'm fucking 40. Back then, that was pretty fucking expensive. Still kind of is. So I was like, I've always been curious to watch that show. I've had friends tell me it was good, and it's something my dad really liked. So I had this great brainstorm. Maybe, just maybe, if I get this, I can tell my dad about it. And if I tell my dad about it, I can loan it out to him. And maybe he and I can start talking about it. And sure enough, that's what happened. We started connecting again through Star Trek. And it was really great. And what helped a little more was my ex at the time. She used to be a big Trekkie or Trekker, whatever you want to call yourselves now. And she really enjoyed watching the first season with me. So when I finished that, I told my dad. He was super excited about that because he used to love the show, like I said. So I absolutely gave it to him as fast as humanly possible. And over the next couple of nights, I could call my parents and talk to them about it. And I'd ask him, hey, did you get to this episode yet? Or start telling him, oh yeah, I love that episode. And I really love this one where Data was doing blah, blah, blah. And he would just click and automatically know. I was like, yeah, I know which episode you're talking about. I just finished that one not too long ago. Or yeah, I'm about to get to that one. It was a really special moment. And it became a thing for about, I think 9 paychecks where I just kept picking up season after season after season, every paycheck. And I would go watching them, hand them off to my dad, and we'd start talking about them and geeking out. It was really nice. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for that drink. And anyway, going back to how this connects to my dad and I and how it really goes into who I am, or made me now who I am. I have a passion for movies that really does border on being a bit extreme, because at one point with just DVDs alone, and this was back in, 2008, 2009, I had about 4,000 plus DVDs. And I mean, it was insane. And I still have way too many fucking Blu-rays and DVDs. I mean, shit, my parents still have a whole bunch of mine in storage. But it's because being raised by our dad, like our mom and dad, they never divorced. They never had, well, they had some problems now and then, but who the fuck didn't? They worked them out and they stayed together. But my mom, she worked in grocery, and she actually was a manager at a Vaughn's or Lucky's. I can't remember which now. But she got to be manager, and she would work nights. So my dad usually was the one watching over me and my sister and putting us in bed. So that would mean a lot of time with our dad telling us bedtime stories, which usually was him reading Little House on the Prairie, the Anna Green Gables books, because my sister really liked those, and they were good. I liked them too. And then it was just reading things that I liked, like the kids' book abbreviated version of Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and things like that. But my favorite memories that just absolutely stand out all the time to me with my dad is movies. Like, I still remember when we went to Blockbuster, which we went a lot, and you're going to hear a lot about Blockbuster with me. He rented a movie he absolutely was crazy about and told me repeatedly, "You're gonna love this. It's the funniest damn thing ever created. You're gonna go insane." And I just had no interest. And he kept telling me all day long, all the way up until the evening came, we were gonna watch this on a Saturday. "You are gonna love this movie. It's my favorite movie, and you're not even ready for this." The movie was Monty Python and the Holy Grail, The Search for the Holy Grail. I protested this so much as a kid. I did not want anything to do with it, because instead I wanted to watch some dumbass horror movie I got, which in the end turned out to be a really shitty movie. I can't remember what the hell the movie was, but I just knew I didn't have any interest in watching one of my dad's old movies. And that comes from my mom, because with my dad, anytime, literally up until recently, anytime you told him you haven't seen a movie he mentioned, he always repeated like a record one phrase. It's always, "Oh my God, it's a classic. You gotta see this." Imagine 40 years of that, and you got my dad and I. And now that's what I do, coincidentally. But that's what he kept on about, and that's why we had to see this movie, because he knew I hadn't seen it, and he knew I would love it. But I protested right up to the point of watching it, right up to the Black Knight and his little bridge. And the whole time up until then, I was chuckling and biting my lip to stop from chuckling, because I kept wanting my dad to know I am not happy about this. And he made me a promise. He's like, "We're going to watch 10 more minutes of this. And if you're not laughing your ass off, you can go, you can do whatever. I'll turn the movie off. You can put on yours." So I'm like, all right, deal. Easy enough. The moment the Black Knight lost his arm and my dad started laughing, I was done. I lost my shit. And I can see that in my head. I can see exactly our old house, where I was when that happened. And it was the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life at that point. And he was right. And that moment on, the rest of the night watching that movie, I could not stop laughing. My sides were hurting and I had tears. It was the funniest shit. And I had never seen anything like it. I had never seen anything like it before. And I lost my shit. It was the funniest fucking thing, man. I had never experienced Monty Python, and I fell in love with him after that. And even to this day, I still buy every version of their movies that come out, because I fucking love those films. But even further back than that, I just recently realized this too, and I'm gonna need another one here now. Yeah, thank you. Oh, man. I never actually realized this. I've played this memory over in my mind, God, 100 times at least growing up. But I never realized till recently, when he passed away, that it's because of my dad that I found what I sadly have obsessed over and loved, regardless the dumpster fires around it, and regardless how much money it's taken from my life. And now, sadly, the years it's taken from my life. Fucking Star Wars. Fucking Star Wars. And this is kind of funny to me because it's still, to me, this is still perfect of how Star Wars was. But as a kid, my dad rented A New Hope and he put it on for me while him and my mom were busy cleaning. And I remembered bits and pieces as a kid. And I just remember that it was a fun movie. I loved the hell out of it. But the thing is, because my dad was working all the time, my mom was as well, they often were not aware of what they bought, what they rented. It's, last thing on their mind, because most of the stuff was for kids. But we went to the Blockbuster. Again, like I said, Blockbuster comes up a lot in this. And my dad was asking me, okay, what do you want to rent? What do you want to see? And I remember I told him that I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was a space movie. And it had a lot of cool stuff and a lot of ships and explosions. And my dad's like, that could be a lot of things. And he's like, well, do you remember any of the characters or anything special about it? I was like, well, yeah. I'm like, there was a guy and he swings across a thing with a girl. And I remember that there was a pretty cool sword fight and the swords lit up. My dad's like, oh, okay, it's Star Wars. All right, well, all right, yeah, we can rent that. Which one do you want to watch? He blew my fucking mind. I did not know there was more than one Star Wars movie. And I just wide-eyed at the prospect that there was more to this story. And I told him, I don't know. It's like, well, okay, which Star Wars did you watch? And again, I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, what else happened in this? Because my dad, as much as he loved movies, he loved Star Wars, but he really hadn't seen it either once it came out on VHS. It was something he remembered more when him and my mom saw it in theaters, or when he saw it in theaters with his friends. So I had to find a way to tell my dad as a kid a breakdown of A New Hope. And the closest I could get was telling him there was a scene where it was really scary. The guys were all in a room and one of the guys got attacked by a monster. And the monster dragged the hero guy under and it looked like he was dead, but then he came back. And my dad just stared at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? But thankfully, there was a Star Wars fan nearby. And this man started chuckling. And he told my dad, he's talking about episode 4, A New Hope. And my dad just kind of gave a embarrassed look. He's like, oh, all right. Thank you for that. And then they knew which movie to give me. And the rest, as we say in our family, and as you may well do yourself, is history. Because no movies outside of Monty Python have affected me as much as Star Wars. I mean, I have worn out VHS copies of those movies. And again, I didn't realize till thinking about things and thinking about our past and a lot of that stuff, I just never realized that, yeah, he showed that to me. And he introduced me to A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and then ending it with Return of the Jedi. And if he had not done that, I don't honestly know that I ever would have connected with it as much as I had. Because, I mean, I loved how my dad would sell movies. because as I got older, it kind of became a fun thing with friends and exes that anytime my dad would tell you, you have to see this movie, especially if it's a new movie, I would tell my exes, my friends, like, we're not going to have to see the movie after this. And they would never understand it until he would start. But my dad would get so excited about the prospect of you seeing a movie he enjoyed that he would tell you inadvertently, he would lay out the entire film for you. He wouldn't spoil the ending, but he would tell you how things start, what happens toward the middle, tell you about the villain, tell you what the villain does that makes them the villain, and then tell you, oh, and the ending's just, oh, it's great. I don't want to spoil it for you. And then he would realize he just told you the entire movie. It was great. I really love that. And again, that's because that's how my dad decided to dad with us. That's how I really connected with him. And growing up, that's what I loved about him. You know, I could finish my homework, and as soon as homework was done and it was close to bedtime, I always loved that because bedtime meant we could watch something together. All three of us, me, my dad, my sister. And every weekend, he would look at the newspaper, see what was playing at the drive-in, see what was playing at our theater, and we would go and see those. See, whatever it was, we would go and see it. And I still remember when Jurassic Park came out and the huge line we had to stand in just to go see that. And then how many more times I saw it with my friends back in elementary school when it came out and how much I loved it. And again, it's all these movies I saw, everything I did with my dad, everything he did with us, every single movie we saw, every TV show, it's something that sticks with me. And it's still something that this is how I grew up relaxing. It's why I love doing the podcast I do with my sister and her friend Adrian. Well, our friend Adrian. It's because even though they're Nick Cage films, which I will admit I am not a fan of, I just love discussing and dissecting and shitting on movies when they deserve it. Not just because, when they deserve it. And a lot of that comes from my dad, because he would always do this. He would always want us to see a movie, especially ones he loved, because he would want us to love the movie with him. And it's something growing up that I got as a gift that my parents loved and at times hated, which is I could find the weirdest things, movies that they would never in their life watch. And suddenly they're classics. They're things that my family treat like The Godfather, which is another film story I'll share with you, because this is a prime example of why I love my dad. I was watching movies late on HBO one night, and I came across a movie, had no idea what it was about. It was called Blood In, Blood Out. And I was in junior high at the time this came out. And I caught the movie right at the start. And I started watching it. Long movie. Not going to go into the story. You got to check it out for yourself. But I absolutely fell in love with it. However, I knew my dad would not give this movie the time of day. And the reason being is because, I'm not going to call my dad what other people generally would. I'm not going to say it's because he's racist. It's not. He just did not like movies about gangs. That was it. Because to him, it was a world he didn't know about. And the only thing he ever knew was what he saw on Fox News. And just even in regular local news. Because, God, this was in a time before fucking Fox News ever existed. And that's another episode later in his life. You could not get him to watch anything else other than Fox News. But that's in his old man days. Before that, he actually watched regular news. But he did not care for hip hop, rap, and the fact that I enjoyed those things, he couldn't get on board with. So I just knew a movie about Mexican street gangs, he was not going to get behind. And that's not even like the central point of the film. It's part of it. But God, it was such a damn good movie. And I told my mom about it. And I told her, look, yeah, I really love this movie. She was like, oh, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. She was never going to watch it. Fast forward, we're into high school now. And I find that movie on VHS, which further dates me. And I rent it. And I'm just telling my parents when I rent it, I'm like, oh God, you guys, this is like my favorite movie of all time. It's great. It's a classic. You got to see it. So my mom decided that she was going to be the one to do so. So when my dad heard my mom say, all right, I'll give it a try and I'll watch it with you, that was when my dad would concede. And that is when my dad would watch things with us. Because this, again, something I get from him. We exercise our right to protest regularly, and we will bitch at length about a lot of things. Doesn't mean we're not going to do it. We'll still do it. We're just going to exercise our God-given right to bitch about it. So that's what we did. And because my mom sided with me on this and decided she was going to give it a chance, my dad's like, well, I'm going to do it. Because if mom ruled on it, then he was going to be a part of it. But if my mom said nope, he backed her up. Again, I love that about my parents. They would always do that for each other. Whatever play my mom had, my dad would back 100%. And same with my dad. Anything he played, whatever his play was, yes or no, my mom backed 110%. And God bless him for that. So I got him to watch it. And even though my dad rolled his eyes at some of the stuff that was said and just kind of groaned every once in a while, he loved that movie. My mom fell in love with that movie. So much so to the point that years later, when I had my own apartment, my first apartment, and I was living with my ex, anytime that movie was on cable, my mom would call me up immediately and she would tell me that it's on. And it would be so funny to me because I'm thinking, oh, that's great. I love it. I want to see that movie from the start. But every time she told me, it was already an hour and a half into the fucking movie. But that's how you knew that they loved this movie, because they treated it the same way they treated The Godfather, Goodfellas, and A Bronx Tale. Didn't matter what part the movie was at. As soon as they knew it was on, they were invested and they would sit down and they would watch it. And that became one of many films that I got my parents to watch, enjoy, and became something they loved. And again, thinking back to things now, that's actually something I really love that I was able to share with my dad. Not blood in, blood out, but Star Wars was like a gateway drug for me as a kid. And that got me into a whole bunch of sci-fi stuff. And my sister, kind of the same way. She didn't really like Star Wars until much later. But Linda, she got into things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I got into Angel, and that was a fun series. But she really got into more stuff like that. Gilmore Girls and a couple other fun shows. Xena as well. And I also enjoyed that. But she got my dad addicted to Firefly, and she got him addicted to Buffy. And those were two shows he just absolutely loved to death. And something I championed for a long time, and I would push hard on my dad to watch, and my sister, because I was a flag carrier for this fucking show, was Farscape. But my dad, like my sister at the time, would never relent, because they knew the show had to do with Muppets, that there were Muppets in it. Well, puppets. Muppets? Puppets. Fuck it. There were puppets in the show. Man, this is good shit. And now we're getting the swing of things. Anyway, I love Farscape. It's a fun fucking show. There's so many good characters, a lot of great episodes. The humor is just amazing, and it's just absolutely insane. I can't praise that show enough. But for one of my birthdays, I got it was $100 gift certificate to Best Buy. And that was thanks to my grandparents. And I knew exactly what I was going to buy because they had just put out Farscape on Blu-ray. And I was just happy as could be about it. My dad was like, oh, well, that's great. And I eventually cornered him and told him, look, if you watch this with me, I will watch whatever BBC program, series, show you want me to. So he took that bet because he had a lot of those he wanted me to watch, which I believe at the time it was the BBC did a Hercule Poirot series, and I loved it. I did. I really got into that. But I got my dad cornered, sat him down, and got him to watch Farscape. The moment we finished that series was the happiest I'd been in a long time, because the show, for people that don't know, it ends on a cliffhanger because it unfortunately got canceled. And it wasn't until fans got together and started, we'll say, an early version of a Kickstarter or GoFundMe, that money actually got put together to make a miniseries movie to finish the series. And my dad was so upset the show ended how it did because he wanted to know what happened next. And when I told him, after letting it soak in, that I had the mini movie and we could watch it, he just started laughing. He spit out his cigarette and he just did like a fake Homer Simpson thing where he acted like he was going to choke me. And he just started laughing. He's like, you son of a bitch. He's like, why didn't you tell me that? Why did you wait? And I said, well, because exactly for that. I wanted to see his reaction. And it was the funniest damn thing. I loved it. I loved it so much. And we watched the miniseries and he loved it. It was sad. It was fun, but he loved it. And it's something that it really got to me, because that was something I'd been trying so hard to get somebody to see why I love it. And to have our dad give his thumb of approval on something, it's like that meant it had weight. That meant in this family circle that this was something kin approved. And that meant a lot. And I knew he loved it because about, less than a month after we finished that, my dad called me up and he asked if he could borrow the box set because he wanted to go through and rewatch all the episodes again. And I absolutely said yes. I brought it over for him. And that's when I got even more fun, because our mom told me kind of jokingly, like she usually would. She just rolled her eyes. It's like, I hate you for giving your dad that set. I was like, why? What's going on? And she's like, every day he's just sitting there laughing his ass off, watching these episodes, telling me, you got to come and watch this. You got to sit down, telling me what's going on. And I don't give a shit, but he's so excited. And even after he watches the one episode he was watching, he'll turn on the commentary, go back and watch the episode again to listen to the guys who made it and started it talk about it. And that just... that I really love that, because that's what I do. It's like when I love something, I just dive head first into it, and I cannot get pulled out for the life of me. I mean, I love behind the scenes stuff. I love stuff like that, and special features, commentary tracks. That's when I knew that my dad, I showed him something I loved, and he absolutely loved it too. And knowing that he loved the characters, he loved the stories, and he would even quote it with me, and even got when I would quote the damn thing. And he would share with me on the phone behind the scenes stories that even I didn't know about the show, that he learned from the commentary, because I never got to listen to the commentary because he borrowed the sit all the damn time. It became a regular thing for a while where every few months he would rewatch the damn thing and take it from me. And oh man, I love that. And after that, we eventually did that when I got for my birthday again, the Battlestar Galactica set, and I got him to watch the whole thing with me. Because even that, I didn't get to watch the whole thing of. I know I started watching the final season of it when it aired, and I thought, wow, this is really good. I think I'll try and catch the whole series. So when it all came out on Blu-ray, I just decided, hey, Dad, you want to watch this and see where it goes? He said, yeah, and that became something I really looked forward to. Every couple of days, I'd go over to my parents, and him and I would just veg out and watch 2 or 3 episodes every time I'd come over. And it was so damn fun. And it kind of brings me to, I guess, a point. If I had to make one for anyone. And that's, we don't have a lot of time on this world. And if you're a younger person out there, yeah, you hear that from a lot of people. But the scary thing is, once you hit your 20s, you begin to realize this. Because holy ball sweat, does time just fly the fuck by you. It's amazing how fast a year moves now. I mean, seriously, time hasn't changed at all. Speed's still staying the same, but man alive, does time fly past you. And when you can have moments like that, and when you lose someone in your life, you really realize how much you wish you had more moments like that. You know, you wish that you had more on top of the thousands that you already have. And it makes you realize how important those moments are. Because something that I used to always hear from my parents, and it was just something that I kind of just shrugged off, because okay, this is another life lesson I'll give you as soon as I take another drink here. Why do I keep sipping that? Oh, God. God damn. So, something that's never going to change for you, whatever your age is. Some of you may already know this. All the way up until, we'll say, before the COVID virus outbreak, my dad would lecture me every now and then. It was always something that's happened forever. Anytime I didn't have a job, anytime I was looking for work, and when I was in art school, and I didn't have a job then, and I was just kind of waiting for things to happen, waiting for things for a moment to strike. It's how I am, and I'll get into another time. But anytime that would happen, he would always give you the same lectures about how freeing it is to have your independence, and how great it is to have your own place, to have a job, to have a paycheck, to know that if you want to buy something, if you need something, you can go out and get it. You don't have to ask for it. And how you have to learn to spend wisely, to live within your means, and what you have to do to measure out your paychecks so that you're never broke at the end of each paycheck. And it's funny because, like I said, up until a few months ago, he would give me the same speech that would make sense for your father to tell you before you get your first apartment. And I used to laugh and tell my mom, I'm like, I love him. I love our dad. I think the world of him, and I don't like arguing with the guy, and I don't like getting lectures. I just wish he would realize how old I am and that I have paid bills. I've had to pay rent. I've been late on bills and rent, and it's not fun. I've had to make excuses to people I've called that say, hey, you owe us money. And I've had to play the whole game of, I got 4 bills to pay and I can only afford to pay 2 of them. Which ones is it going to be? And which ones do I have to beg and plead for them to give us an extension? And it was never fun. And I also had to play the game of, do I have money in my account? Or is this going to be a case of your theoretical balance versus your actual balance in your bank account? So yeah, it was never fun, but he would always act like you were just turning 20, like you were just going off to get your first place and first job. And my mom would she'd let me get it out. She would let me get it out. She'd kind of chuckle and go, yeah, I know your dad can be like that. And it wasn't until later that he actually started adding to that. When he would actually just start telling you that the reason he would do that, he knows how old you are. He knows that I've paid for these things. He would still just do it because he loved me. He would do it to my sister all the time. He would say the same things to her, even though she had a fucking house. Even when I had a house, he would just do those things. But it's like, that was him trying to give fatherly advice the only way he knew how. And it's just like they've always said, it's no matter what age you are, to your parents, you'll always be their kid. And it's never meant as an insult. Never take that as an insult from your parents. I mean, unless your parents are flicking cigarettes at you and telling you to get the fuck out of the house, then I can unsee that as an insult. Yeah. But for people that have a fairly okay relationship with their parents, yeah, don't take offense to it. If your parents got to bitch at you, if they got to lecture you, you just let them. Just let them do it. Because eventually there's going to come a time that you're going to wish you had. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And that's really the melancholy moment, I guess. It's a little backstory. When all this happened, our mother and father were vacationing. And we always combated, me and my sister, my parents, on a few things. One was their smoking, because my dad had congestive heart failure and my mother had a problem with her lungs and her heart. And I can't remember what it is offhand, but that's because I've been drinking a lot now. But she has a chronic lung disease, and they still smoked. And it's one of those that, when you get to a certain age, you just figure, well, why stop now? And I'm not going to hold it against them, let alone him now. But that was one thing we always got on them for. The other thing was dogs. They own 6 dogs. They have always had a fleet of dogs. It wasn't so bad when it was little dogs, but then they started upgrading to bigger dogs. And when you're in your 50s and then your 60s, and these dogs are able to knock you on your ass running past you because they're hyper and you can't control them, that's where me and my sister would grumble at them. But anyway, they were vacationing, and one of their dogs bumped into my dad and he fell. And he'd been falling for a couple times over a couple years because he had problems with his knee. And he was getting injections in his back to help with his nerves and a lot of stuff with that. But anyway, he ended up having a pretty bad fall, and it caused a fracture in his spine, the lower part of his spine. And he was scheduled to have surgery for that. And all this was going on right at the outbreak here of the COVID virus. And they were in Oregon at the time. And all of us here in Washington, we were all already doing the whole quarantine, hunting down the streets with pitchforks and torches, guarding Charmin, guarding anything sanitizer wise, and trying to tell our parents what to expect. But they came home, and I, at that point, had not seen our dad and mom for, I want to say, 3 weeks. And when they got back home, I still couldn't see them. And the reason being was I had gotten the flu. And according to my doctor, well, not my doctor, rather, sorry, according to the ER doctor I talked to, he told me that in all likelihood, I had the flu, but I also likely had COVID. He just couldn't test me at the time because I didn't have a high enough temperature. I didn't have shakes, and I wasn't dying, basically. So because of my parents' health concerns, I couldn't go over to see them. And once I got over whatever it was I had, I was fortunate enough I got sick again. So I still couldn't go over and see them. And I was sick actually for about a month and a half. And that developed into bronchitis, which was really fun. So my mom called to tell me that they were getting ready to call an ambulance to take my dad to the hospital. And I couldn't understand what was going on. And apparently it was because he was supposed to have had an appointment. And my mom said he couldn't get out of bed, that everything hurt. He could not do anything. So she called an ambulance. It was pouring rain. I was sick as a dog, but I stood outside. I stood outside to watch for the ambulance. And I waited, and they came, and they finally picked him up. And that was the last time I got to see him. He was being wheeled out, and he was alive. You could see he was moving. And he had a face mask on, feeding him oxygen, and he went off in the ambulance. And my mom said he was okay. He was being taken to a hospital in Tacoma, and they were going to keep him there because that's where his surgery on his back was going to take place. They were going to fix the fracture in his back and everything would be fine. So that was supposed to have happened on a Friday, but the next day we found out the surgery was happening on a Thursday. They had moved it up. And the reason they were moving it up was they found he had a blood clot in the fracture. So that scared them. And they decided, okay, we're going to work on this and get him into surgery. So they did their surgery. It started very late. And my mom was there for him. But because of the COVID concerns, she was allowed to stay in a waiting room, but she could not be with him before the surgery, after the surgery, any time at the hospital. He had to be alone. And I knew that already because I'd been to the ER twice when I was sick. And they told me if I had any family, no one could see me but the doctors. And I hated that because shit, man, being on your own, that's scary as hell. But you really appreciate having someone with you when you're in a situation that you're scared. And I really felt for my dad. My sister called him the day before his surgery. And I told my mom I'd call him too on the day of his surgery. So I did, and we talked. And I ended up getting upset with him because he was treating it like he did anytime he would go to the hospital. He always felt, because of his health, because of, whatever your stance is on smoking. And I'm not going to tell you to stop smoking if you're smoking or tell you what it's going to do to your life. And that's on you. You can do what you want. I'm not going to fucking judge you for it. It's just my dad I felt bad for because between him and my mom, anytime they got sick, especially if they got the flu, it was like 3, 4, 5 times worse for them. And every time my dad would get sick, he would always say he doesn't want to go to the hospital because he was afraid he's going to die. And he treated this the same way, where he was told the health risk, he was told what could happen if it goes wrong. So he was convinced he was going to die. So he wanted to instill on me one more thing of his wisdom and one last lecture. And I hated him for that. I really, really didn't want that. It's like I called to tell him I love him, to tell him I hope the best in this. And he wanted to treat it like he was having to say goodbye. No one wants to hear that from their parent. No one wants to hear someone say that, especially when you feel like, hey, no one's telling you you're going to freaking die. It's always a possibility. Yeah, but it's not a certainty. And at the same time, why would you want that to be your last conversation, right? So his lecture to me was concerning me and my fiance, which, newsflash, I have. And she lives in France currently, and we're in the process of getting her over here and getting her a visa. But it's taking a very long time. Part of it we've dragged our feet on. Another part has just been money concerns. So he wanted to tell me that if it were him, and if my fiance were my mom, his wife, he would be moving hell and earth to be with her. He would be doing everything he could, everything possible to get her here, to be together, to get married. And I told him, Dad, I'm doing that. It's just, there's a lot I have to get, because unfortunately, you have to give every piece of possible evidence to verify to the government that you and this person not only love each other, but have known each other for a long time, and give them every receipt you possibly can and every picture you can of where you've been, what you've bought them, where you've gone, just so they can look at it and go, yeah, okay, these two are a couple. It's official. And I wanted to do what our immigration lawyer had told us to do, which is make the best case file you can. And I know that's a case for dragging my feet too, but I wanted to, because I wanted to make sure she'd get here. But he wanted to make a point, and I got it. But it still made me upset, because I didn't want to think that would be the last thing my dad would have to say to me. So we got off the phone, and I told my fiance what had happened online. I talked to her on Skype. And after that, I called my dad back, because I'm like, you know what? No, if this is going to be the last time I talk to you, it's not going to be being upset at each other. So I called him back, and I told him I started breaking down. I'm fighting that off now. But I told him, look, I don't want to be upset at you, and I don't want you thinking I'm upset either. It's, I want you to come out of this fine, and I know you're going to. But I get what you're saying, and I want more lectures from you, but not right now. And he just kind of laughed. He's like, he felt the same way. He felt really bad, and he was sorry for how that conversation went. And he was glad that I called. He knew that I would be able to handle things. And he even said that. He said he knows he's proud of the man I've become. And he's proud to know that he's taught me well, and that I'm in charge of what I'm doing. I can handle it. And he said, I love you, and we'll all have Mexican food after this is over, and everything will be fine. He did make out fine with his surgery. Everything went well. The only problem came when trying to get him out of the bed, because he fell again. And the doctors decided that he had to be put in a care facility because he was going to need physical therapy 3 times a day. And he had to have this so he could learn to walk again, because he stayed in bed so long up until that point that his legs were too weak. So he didn't want to do that. He absolutely hated the idea of that. But he was going to do it. It's just, he wanted to be home. He didn't want to be away from his dogs, his house, more importantly, his family. He didn't want to be away from his wife. But me, my sister, our mom, we all called him and told him, you gotta do this. You can't come home like this. You gotta walk. You gotta do it on your own. So he said he would. He just said it was a hard pill to swallow, and it was very emotional for him. But he did it. And there were problems. He apparently wasn't eating all the time because he didn't like the food. He didn't like the taste because he was diabetic. So he had to eat diabetic food. And to him, it just tasted like shit. And on top of that, he didn't want to do a lot of the exercises. But they told him, hey, you got to do this or we got to get rid of you because you got to do something here. So he started to. He started giving it his all. He started doing better. He just told me it was like learning to walk again. And yeah, it was starting to go a little better, a little okay. And I called him every 2 days to talk to him because I didn't want him to feel alone. And even at the care facility, my mom still could not see him. Nobody could. And I hated that. I hated that with a passion. Because to me, like I told my fiance and I told my sister, if that were me in that situation, if that was any of us in that situation, that would drive you insane to not have your family with you, let alone your wife, your husband, your partner. And more so, if nobody called you, you'd feel even more, you'd feel depressed. You'd feel alone. And it was hard to talk to him because sometimes he was on so many painkillers. It was like trying to talk to your grandparent when they're dozing in and out of sleep and they're just talking about whatever they're dreaming about. But I still talk to him. My sister did too. My mom did all the time. And I called him one more time and I told him how the lockdown was going and how it was just so funny to me that it was actually acceptable today in this day and age. You could go to a market and have a mask completely covering your face, all but your eyes, and nobody would blink an eye. Nobody would think you're robbing a place. And he would just laugh and say, I can't believe that. He's like, this is just insane. But he would always talk about how this is all going to pass eventually. And when it does, we're all going to go out for food. It's like the main thing with my family. And this has persisted, God, since I was a kid. Family events are a big deal for us. Birthdays, holidays, it's any excuse to have family together. We always did. And the time he was in the hospital, the time he was in the care facility, he missed 2 birthdays. He missed Easter, and my birthday was coming up. And what we decided was when he got home, we would celebrate Easter the day he gets home, which means Easter dinner and candy and all that. And my mom held on to all the candy she bought. And it also meant on the same day, we would likely have cake and ice cream for the 2 birthdays he missed, and likely mine. And my mom had told me that my dad was getting ready to come home in a week, which actually would have been this Friday. And he would have been here in time for my birthday, which again was something I realized.
So we talked a bit about that and how he was excited and how he made his usual promise, which I always know the speech he gives, which is, things may be a little tight right now and restaurants may not be open, but when they are, we're going to get you, your sister, her husband together, and me and your mom, we're going to go out to dinner with you guys. We're going to celebrate his birthday and your birthday, and we're going to have a nice dinner together as family. And that night, I got to tell him, well, like I said, everything that had gone on. And I got to tell him that I was keeping to a promise that he made me make to him the day of his surgery when he was given his confessional speech. He told me, hey, you're the man of the house now, and you got to step up and help your mom out more because I'm not there to do it. So I told him that on the phone. I told him, I'm starting to do that. I'm feeling better now. I'm not sick, so I can help out more. And I went out to the store. I got groceries. I got my parents. I got my mom and my cousin's dinner for the night. And he was really happy about that. And I told him, how things were going here with my mom and the cousin situation. And he told me, hey, go tell them this on my behalf and stand by your mom 100% and keep on helping her. I said, all right, I will. It's like, until you get home, because there's only so much I can do. You're the swinging axe in the family and what you say goes. So I only have so much say in that regard. But he said, all right, don't worry. I'll be doing that. And this is something that's always bothered me, at least the time I've had to think about it. But normally when I talk to my parents, I always just tell them goodbye. If it's night and we're talking, my dad would usually say good night, and that's what I say back to him. If we had an argument and then reconciled, we would say we love each other. This was one of the rare times, and I sadly do mean rare, where when we reached the end of the conversation and he told me his pills were kicking in, so it's time he should go to bed, I told him, all right, well, I'll talk to you soon, and I love you, Dad. And you could tell that meant a lot to him. You could tell that meant a lot to him, and that he was genuinely touched to hear that. Because normally and again, I get this from my parents, especially him, I don't normally share my emotions, especially when it comes to my dad still. And he would usually have to be the one to initiate that. And it's always been something we always joke about. They have to say something to me first to get a reaction from me. And even then, I'm usually a man of few words. But this was one of the rare times that I actually initiated it, and I told my dad I love him. And he got to say it back to me. So the next day, talking with my fiance and watching a movie together online. Oh, my sister was doing work from home, and we were talking about the podcast and what we're going to watch next. And I get a call from my mom, and the answering machine started to catch it, and I caught it in time. But I knew something was wrong because she was in tears. And she wouldn't tell me what was wrong. She just told me to come over as soon as possible. And in the back of my head, I'm just like, I knew it had to do with our dad. And this is kind of hard to explain exactly because I'm really skipping over a lot here, but it's going to sound funny, I'm sure. I am not a religious person. My father was Christian. His parents were Christian. And they used to take me and my sister to summer Bible school as kids, and there's a lot of fun stories there. I'll share that eventually someday. But I struggled with faith a lot, and I still do. But there are times in my life, just like other people, I know this does happen, where no matter what you choose to believe or what you don't believe, you still find yourself hoping things get better. And a little ritual I go through every night before I go to bed while my fiance and I are apart is I got in a habit of every time I lay in bed, I say goodnight to my cat and my dog, and then I just say goodnight to my fiance. And I say that I hope tomorrow will be a nice, relaxing day together, that I look forward to talking to you in the morning when I wake up, and I look forward to every day together, and that I hope you know that I love you, that I miss you, and I very much look forward to being together. And ever since the COVID outbreak, I actually started adding to that I sincerely hope and pray for the safety and health of my family and her family, for her sister and mine, for her parents and mine. And it's something that it always gave some kind of measure of comfort saying, and especially when you would talk to someone and hear they were doing well, which it sounded like he was doing well. But the moment my mom called crying, and I just knew that it had to do with my dad, I couldn't accept that. And I know, marching over to my mom's house, I started cussing out God aloud. I was like, if my dad is gone, I'm fucking done with this. I hate you. Why would you do this? And when I got in my mom's house, she was bawling her eyes out. And again, I said this was going to be gonzo. I'm going to not spare anything here, because why? Let's be honest about everything. But my mom, this is the first time I actually got to be close to my mom since the COVID stuff, and even getting him food, because I kept my distance. But my mom had me come over to her. She grabbed my arm and she just looked up to me and said, "Dad's dead." And she just started saying, "I don't want to be alone. And I don't know what I'm going to do." She told me that he was found unresponsive, and she wasn't sure what all had happened. And something clicked. And it's kind of weird explaining this, but it's like I flicked a switch and held back all crying. I held back breaking down everything. And I told my mom, okay, I'm going to take care of stuff. I'm going to start making calls. And my cousins were upstairs, and she was trying to call out to them because she wanted to tell them and she wanted them to come down. But I told her I'd take care of it. So I went upstairs and I told our younger cousin Jenny, and her and my dad were very close. And she lost it. And she started hugging me and crying. And I told her, hey, go downstairs, go comfort my mom, be with her right now, because I've got to do something for her. So I took their phone and I started making calls. And I had to let every family member know what had happened. And that ain't easy. That's not something you want to do, believe me. And especially having to tell my sister that. I mean, yeah, it was really hard for us, but I took care of that for my mom. I talked to her and I told her, okay, I'm going to stay here a bit. I'm going to help out and then I'm going to go back home. And by the time I did, as soon as I got home, I collapsed. I lost it. And I just could not stop. I was just slamming my forehead in the wall, shouting out why repeatedly, wanting to know why of all things to happen, why of all people. I could not believe it. My sister, she told me she was going to call the care facility. She wanted to find out what happened. So she called and talked to them, and then she told me. And apparently what happened with my dad was they were going to give him his morning physical therapy, but he said he was feeling very lightheaded and very dizzy. So they checked his blood pressure and saw it was incredibly low. So they gave him something to help with that. And they said, okay, let's get you lying down and we'll come back in a bit and check on you. So about 12 minutes later, they go in the room to check on him and they found he was unresponsive. And they called an ER technician, two of them, to come in and work on him. And they spent about 45 minutes working on him. And they still said he was non-responsive. What apparently had happened was a blood clot from his leg traveled up to his lungs and split off. It was a very large, very sizable blood clot. It was a pulmonary embolism is what they said it was. And the blood clot ended up blocking his air passage. And morbidly, the only good thing to come of that was they said when it happens, you feel you have trouble breathing, you pass out, and that's when you pass over. So they said he died without pain, and he died very quickly. And again, it's kind of morbid to say, but it's still something you kind of learn to take comfort in. Because it's better and helps to imagine and know that somebody didn't suffer in the end. And I'm grateful for that, but I'm still not happy with it. I still don't accept it. Which is weird. It's like, I mean, you have to learn to move on. You have to accept things. But, and I do, but it's, fuck me running how to put that, because it's like I accept that he's no longer with us, and that makes me sad. And every day I wish I could talk to him. Same with my sister. She's the same exact way. But because we didn't get to see him, because he wasn't home, there's something about that where, and I hate using this as an example, but it's like I understand what they're saying now. But Mark Hamill was asked when Carrie Fisher passed how he was taking that. And he said just the reality of it never sank in. It's like he still would talk about her as if she was there. He would still talk about how he's going to call her up and tell her things that he wants to, but then he has to remind himself he can't. And that makes him profoundly sad. And that's kind of where we're at. It's like, I know he's gone. We had a viewing service for him, which was very hard in its own right. And I'm not going to go into that right now because just the off chance my sister hears this, she didn't want to see him at the viewing. And I understand her reasons for that. So I don't want to go into that. But it's just one of those, it's hard. It's already hard seeing someone you love like that. But when you haven't seen them in a while and just the drastic changes they went through, because hell, the whole time he was gone, he lost about a good 25, 30 pounds before he went to the hospital. And then during the time he was in the care facility, he lost another 25, 30 pounds. That's a hell of a lot. That's almost 60 pounds there. So, I mean, that's just hell. I've been there and I know I looked a hell of a lot different when I lost that. So it was hard. But for me, it's still the whole not having seen him when he left. It's because he was somewhere else other than home. It's like you still feel like he's supposed to be here, you know, like he's still going to be here. I still got a bit of this drink here. You know, it's hard, but, you know, I got to say goodbye to him. And that's another thing entirely. It's like, what do you say? What do you say to someone, especially a parent, you know, when you're alone in a room with them and, you know, you're there to see them before you bury them. And in his case, we're cremating him. But I said a lot to him. You know, I told him I'm going to do what he said. That I'm going to look after our mom. I'm going to do my best to be the man of the house. And I told him that's a very, very hard act to follow because he was one of the greatest men I ever knew. And I will try my best to live up to that. It's a very hard thing, but, you know, I'll do what I can. And on a funnier note, because a lot of people don't know this about me, and I share this with my dad, many years ago when I was 21, I did what was a fun joke at the time. I paid $20 online to get registered as a priest. And I just thought it was a funny thing at the time. But I legally can perform weddings, funerals, whole bunch of services here. So when a funeral director asked my mom if we had a priest in mind or a church service, anything like that for my dad, I immediately volunteered. And again, it's because I know my dad would appreciate this. It's taken in mind. If you got a skill, don't let it go to waste. So I'm going to be presiding over his service. And I told him that. And I told him I'm going to do two things. I'm going to do a traditional service, which he would want, because my dad was very much a traditionalist. He loved tradition. So I shared with him a reading from the Bible that I would use that I thought he would really like. And I really liked it. But then I told him that I also know he really wants me and my sister to be ourselves, to be comfortable with ourselves. So I'm going to do my own speech as well with that. And it's going to be a very fun thing that absolutely would have made him just embarrassed but laughing. And I told him what I planned to say then too. And I did the service for him while I was there. It was weird, yeah, but you know, I got to give closure to it. I got to say goodbye. And a week from then, we'll be doing an actual graveside service where I get to give my speech and read from the Bible as well as the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead, which I plan because I'm going to be me, just like he said. But that's what happened. And like I said at the beginning of this beginning of this whole 2-hour ordeal, I'm doing this because I kept telling myself I would and then finding reasons not to. And I know for myself, I want to do this so I can say that I followed his advice for once. Well, not even for once. I mean, yeah, for once, I'm going to follow the old man's advice. And he can rest easy knowing that I actually listened to one of his lectures and saw it through to completion. So, yeah, I'm not going to have, hopefully not a lot of somber things like this. And some of it may just be straight up therapeutic, you know? I just really don't know. I hope I'm not going to drink nearly as much, or maybe I'll drink more. I just can't make any promises. But like I said, there are going to be a whole broach of different subjects. It's just, I just wanted to get off my mind what's been on my mind. You know, and if doing that and doing these things together is what helps me get through that, then great. You know, I don't need looking for sympathy. And I don't need people listening to this because they think that's the way to show they care. You know, you could give a shit or you don't. Doesn't matter to me. You know, like I said, I don't know how often I'll be doing this or not. I just want to talk about my dad, and I know I'm still going to do that. I'm still going to find times that I want to do that. And there's a lot to talk about. Oh God, even doing this is, like I said, I'm looking at the counter here. I'm almost at 2 fucking hours here. And I still have held back so much that I want to talk about, you know, but that also lets me know it's almost closing time here. And if this was a bar, it'd be last call. And I know that the reason I'm talking more like this is because the whiskey is hitting. It has got me in a good spot right now. And like I said, this is going to be treated like a bar. That's why I'm thanking every shot I get. That's why I'm talking to you like you're my own bartender, like you're a guy at the bar with me, a gal. You know, it's however you choose to identify yourself, I will not judge. But like I said, I think this is going to be fun. For me, it is. And if you want an idea what to look forward to here, oh, God help us. I am eventually going to break down the entire 9 fucking Star Wars films. Because Christ almighty, I got a lot to say about the last 3. And it is going to be a trip. I'm also going to talk about a couple movies I love. Going to talk about John Carpenter films. Going to talk about the Jaws fuckfest that is 2, 3, and 4. Got a lot of movies to go through here. Fuck. A lot of video games too. But I've got rants for days, people. So you better buckle up for this. But getting back to the subject of my dad. Oh, fuck. Bar wisdom, right? Every rant's got to end with something like that. You got to take something home with you, don't you? It's usually what happens when you got the fucking drunk at the end or someone finishing a grand story and shit. Well, I don't know if I got wisdom for you. I've already shared some nuggets. Mostly, like I said, you know what? I'm going to actually quote something my mom said once. Because this is something that means a lot to me. And she said it at the burial we had for her brother. And it's something I've always taken with me. It's going to screw it up, I know, but I don't care. Troubles will come and go. Bills, money problems, hell, money will come and go. Friends will come and go. Relationships. Everything comes and goes like that. Family. You only have one family. So you make the most of the time you have with family. Never take it for granted. Like the Brandon Lee said in The Crow, things you used to argue over you thought were trivial, you learn nothing is trivial. Same applies with your families. your cousins, your sisters, your brothers. Unless you have an uncle who just molested the fuck out of everyone and was Mr. Happy Hands, don't go reconciling with them. Don't go spending more time with them, obviously. Distance the fuck out of them. Everyone else, though, try and be close. Don't roll your eyes all the time and bite your tongue if you can when you're getting lectured. Because again, there's going to come a time when you're going to want those lectures. I know even now, as many lectures as he gave, one of the funniest last things I got to say to him was when we had to convince him that he had to stay in that facility until he could walk again. I told him, look, you got to do this. And, I feel funny now because it feels like our roles are reversed. I'm you and you're me because I'm having to tell you got to do something you don't want to do. And he just laughed. He's like, I know, but I already told your mom. I already told your sister. I'm going to do this stuff. I'm going to stick with it. And I told him, well, good. Because I've got 1,000 fucking lectures that I can give you. And I learned every last one of these in great detail from a man far greater than myself. And don't even think for a moment I won't hesitate to lay down 5 or 10,000 of these on you. And we laughed our asses off because he knew it was true. And he absolutely loved that. And I absolutely still believe that now. There's times you got to step up and you got to be a parent. And that becomes a parent. Just learn to love your family. Spend time with them. Take your fucking headphones off. Put your goddamn phone down. Your iPad. Stop tweeting. Stop playing your games. Just spend time with your fucking family. Listen to them. Watch something with them. Do something. Because when you lift your head up, they may be gone. And on a happier note, before I pour this last drink out, or rather get served this last drink, thank you very much, I think I should find something fun to share. Something light. Let's get that last shot in the glass first. There we go. Something fun and light. Gosh, what would that be? Oh, man. I'll share a memory, and then I'll share something fun and light. How about that? Something I really enjoyed was watching a beautiful, pristine cut of Jaws with my dad. They recorded it on the satellite. It was Jaws in 4K. And my dad knows I love horror movies. He can't stand them. He's never been able to like gore, but thankfully, because I got him into the first season of The Walking Dead, he's learned to accept gore. But we are watching Jaws, and there's 3 points in that movie he jumped at. And he's always told me, ever since the first time he's seen that film, and all the hundreds of times he's still seen that film, he knows those moments are coming. He knows Ben Gardner's head is going to pop out from that hole in the boat, and he's going to see it without the eye, but he still jumps. And he still knows every single time that the shark busts through that window when Roy Scheider is looking around for a life vest, he's going to jump. He always knows it's going to happen, but he still jumps. And he still loves those movies. He loved that movie. And him and I getting to watch it and geek out over it, and him getting to tell me all the stories about when the movie came out and what that was like seeing it for the first time. That's what I treasure. And I recently ordered on 4K the movie Jaws. And it was something that I was hoping to watch with him, but I'm going to watch my own now. It's going to take time. which is the saddest thing I think for me right now, is because how much I relate movies and my love of them to him. It really is kind of odd watching stuff without him. You know, I had a whole list of stuff that I wanted him to watch, and I would talk about with him, and he would say, yeah, I'll watch it as soon as I get home. And sadly, I know he's never going to get to experience. But I say it sadly, but I'm still happy because he absolutely would have. And he would have loved those shows. And even though there were some that we already saw, it's just that's how he and I were. We would always think of each other, same as my sister. You would always watch something and go, God, this is something Linda would love. Oh, this is something Donnie's got to see. And I love that. And every time I watch Star Wars now, I'm always going to think of him. Same with the Untouchables, with Monty Python, all the stuff like that. And that is where I'm going to give you the fun story. Fun story, and then I'm taking a final shot. All right, here we go. My dad used to tell my sister's friends, my exes, all of us this story. And he has a lot like this with celebrities. But my father and my mother, when they were dating all the way up until we moved away from California, they were Los Angeles Kings fans through and through. The only team they loved more than the Los Angeles Kings were the LA Dodgers. That was their life. And that's how we grew up. And we have a lot of connections with a lot of the older players. We've skated with them. We made cookies for Luke Robitaille and his family. We have, oh man, so many memories with that. But one of his stories he loved telling us about was about an all-star game that he went to with my mom. And it was for an anniversary, I believe. And anyway, a puck got shot onto the boards and flew out to the stands. And it came out in my dad's direction. He reached out for the puck to catch it. Every fan that's ever done this regrets it. Because if you've never played hockey, that is a solid puck of rubber that's traveling a real fast fucking lot. And it hurts like a bitch. I have been hit in the wrist when I played hockey by a hockey puck. And that sucker hurt and bruised for weeks. My dad reached out to catch it, just like any other fan tries. And the puck smacked him right in the wrist. And of course, he howled out in pain. The puck landed behind him. He went looking for it. And he saw some guy, as he put it, some asshole behind me picked up the puck, cheered and held it, and then patted my dad on the shoulder, saying, sorry about your hand. And the person that grabbed the puck from him and kept it was Tom Petty. And my dad, just like his story about Jim Morrison from The Doors, it's the funniest thing. He loves both of these guys' music. I grew up loving Tom Petty. My sister loves Tom Petty's music. My dad loved Tom Petty's music. We all loved it. But my dad still would always say, as much as I love that guy's music, God, I felt he was such an asshole for keeping that puck. And if you're curious, because I mentioned Jim Morrison, my dad got to see Jim Morrison in concert once. He paid to go to some club in LA where the Doors were playing. And he told me it was them. And I want to say Jefferson Starship, maybe. Like, I can't remember the other band that played. It was a big, big, big band. And he was telling me he got to see Morrison. He went up on stage and they did the whole thing where they had cops up there to keep people out and shit like that from getting up on stage. And Jim Morrison, my dad was so excited to see them and the Doors, like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is gonna be great. Jim Morrison did the entire concert with his back toward the audience. And it was just something he did. And people, especially according to my dad, hippies, were like, yeah, that's great. He's making a statement. Right on. My dad was one of the only people in the audience who could say, up until the day he was gone, that he was shouting and yelling at Jim Morrison. He's like, I paid to see you. Turn the fuck around. And that was our dad. He got to see people that me and my sister, our friends, our exes would hear about and just think, oh my God, that must be so cool. You got to see these people. You were so close to them. And he just tells you, yeah, I love their music. They're great musicians. But man, were they fucking assholes. Man, did I wish they would just turn around because I paid to see them and sing and I can't see them. And I just thought that was really fucking rude. I love that shit. I love those stories. And just knowing that that was so our dad. So, as I said, a memory and a good story, a fun story. So we end it with our last shot before doors here close and we get kicked out. So I will say again, to me and my fiance, a long life of health, wealth, love, and happiness in our past, present, and future relationship together. The same for my family, my sister and her husband, our friends and loved ones, to all of you, to your significant others, to your family and friends, and to my father. I will always miss you. I will always love you. And you are never far from me. Cheers. Thank you all, and good night.